AI agents are everywhere, automating tasks and making decisions at machine speed. But agents make mistakes. Just one rogue agent can do big damage before you even notice. Rubrik Agent Cloud is the only platform that helps you monitor agents, set guardrails, and rewind mistakes, so you can unleash agents, not risk. Accelerate your AI transformation at Rubrik.com. That's RUBRIK.com.
The holidays are already in full swing. The lights are up, you got good people, good food, and good vibes. And there to help keep that energy going is Sprite Winter Spice Cranberry. With that crisp cranberry flavor with a smooth winter spice twist. It's the drink that livens up game nights, gift exchanges, or just catching up in the kitchen with a burst of holiday flavor. It's a seasonal favorite, but it's only here for a limited time. So grab it while you can. Sprite Winter Spice Cranberry. Sprite. Obey your thirst.
You're listening to Missing Persons, brought to you by AbJack Entertainment. Be sure to check out some of the other great true crime podcasts from this network, including The Murder in My Family, DNA ID, Zodiac Speaking, Scene of the Crime,
Beyond Bizarre True Crime, Campus Killings,
and
Killer Communications.
All of these podcasts are available for you to binge on right now, wherever you listen to podcasts. Subscribe where you're listening to this podcast so you don't miss an episode.
The views and opinions expressed by guests on this podcast do not necessarily represent those of the podcast, its creators, or sponsors. This episode may contain unsettling or disturbing subject matter. Listener discretion is advised.
If you'd like to support Missing Persons and get VIP access to things like ad-free listening, early preview episodes, and bonus content of not only this show, but for every other podcast on the AbJack network of indie podcast, consider subscribing to the show with an AbJack Insider subscription through Apple Podcast. For only $4.99 a month or $49.99 a year, you'll unlock a variety of listener benefits, and you'll be supporting the show in the process. Your support is greatly appreciated.
Welcome to Missing Persons, a podcast dedicated to spreading the word about people who have vanished under mysterious or unexplained circumstances and the family members who are looking for answers. I'm Jess Betancourt.
And I'm Mike Morford. Together, we created this podcast to help give a voice to people who continue to search for their missing loved ones. In some cases, even after decades have gone by. In each episode, you'll hear from Jess giving listeners the backstory and the basic facts of the disappearance.
Then Mike will speak with someone who's intimately connected to the missing person, and his guest will share their story with us. So sit back and enjoy this episode, and who knows, maybe you can help us find someone who's missing. Today's missing persons case is the perplexing disappearance of Robert Gautsche from Castle Rock, Douglas County, Colorado. Robert was born on October 15, 1962, making him just 58 years old when he disappeared in 2021. Robert had been married and had 2 children and a thriving career, first in corporate real estate and then in medical device sales and a corporate vice presidency. He was intelligent, successful, and accomplished. But in recent years, a high-pressure position resulted in Robert becoming addicted to alcohol and pills. He ended up losing his family, his job, and his savings. He was in and out of rehab and alcohol treatment programs, but commonly relapsed when he was out. In one facility, he suffered a fall that resulted in a traumatic brain injury that further impeded his independent functionality. Robert's younger brother, Brad, assumed his older sibling's power of attorney because Robert was no longer able to make well-reasoned decisions and handle his own affairs. In the late 20-teens, Robert worked to get his life back on track, even getting a new teaching job, but relapsed in 2020 and was admitted to a Lone Tree hospital. There he was diagnosed with Wernicke-Korsakoff disease, a neurological disorder brought on by alcohol abuse, which causes confusion and memory loss and is eventually fatal. He remained in the hospital for several months until he became stabilized and adjusted to his antipsychotic medication. After his release, his brother Brad committed Robert to a lockdown rehab facility in Arvada to ensure he had no access to drugs or alcohol. Robert remained at the facility for 6 months, staying until February 1st, 2021. Robert was last seen in Castle Rock, Colorado on February 4th, 2021. Just 2 days before his disappearance, he had moved to an assisted living facility, Silver Heights Skilled Nursing and Rehabilitation, at 4001 Home Street. This was not a lockdown situation, but one in which Robert had less restricted freedom of movement, unbeknownst to his family. On the morning of Wednesday, February 3rd, Robert spoke with Brad on the phone, requesting $50 to purchase cigarettes. Brad made sure Robert got the money he needed. Then on Thursday the 4th, between 7 and 7:15 p.m., Robert told a nurse at the Silver Heights facility that he was going outside for a smoke. He was a chain smoker and was happy that his new residential facility permitted outdoor smoke breaks without the supervision he had had at the lockdown facility. He never came back inside. Upon realizing that Robert was missing, an administrator at the facility got in her car and drove the area. It was nighttime and visibility was limited, but she believed she saw Robert walking on the southbound shoulder of Interstate 25 near mile marker 184 towards Sam's Club in the 5900 block of Promenade Parkway. By the time the driver was able to pull over to check, the man she saw had disappeared down a hill. It's uncertain that this sighting was Robert. Police responded to the facility's report that Robert was gone, and they conducted an immediate search of the area for him, and also reviewed nearby surveillance footage. And they found an important clue. At 8:15 p.m. on the night he disappeared, Robert was seen at the King Soopers supermarket in the 5500 block of Promenade Parkway, walking eastbound in the parking lot. Inquiries at the store revealed that he had attempted to purchase cigarettes and food there, but he didn't have any money. He twice attempted to pay with a store loyalty card that was not a form of payment. Employees at the store said he was behaving oddly. He left, the store's surveillance camera capturing him as he walked away. After that, there have been no more sightings of Robert. He never returned to the assisted living facility and has never been heard from again. He had no money or phone with him when he absconded, and he did not have his medication. Robert is believed to have left the facility voluntarily, as he has a history of attempting to escape from lockdown facilities he was in the past. Searches for and inquiries about Robert have been fruitless. Ground searches and canvases have come up empty. The Douglas County Sheriff's Office issued social media and news alerts about the case, conducted a reverse 911 call to local residents, checked area hospitals, and reviewed camera footage from around the area. Other than the sightings I already discussed, no trace of Robert has been found. Deputy Lauren Childress said in a statement, quote, "We believe Robert was in the area of King Soopers in Castle Rock and may have gotten a ride from someone." The investigators believe that if Robert had succumbed to the elements on that cold February night, he would likely have been located by now. They believe it's possible that Robert attempted to leave the state to visit a former fiancée, whom he had contacted a number of times out of the blue immediately prior to his disappearance. But this ex-fiancée, while admitting that Robert had contacted her on several occasions, has denied seeing or hearing from him since his disappearance. Robert Gautsche was last seen wearing a brown leather jacket, black jeans, and light-colored slipper-style shoes. Robert's brother Brad is one of our guests today. Another is Douglas County Sheriff's Office Detective Kristen Tinsley, who is the lead investigator on Robert's case. Those conversations with Mike Morford are coming up after a word from our sponsors.
New school year, new routines, and a calendar that's somehow filled up overnight. When life gets hectic, the last thing you want to do is cook from scratch, with all of that cleanup. For those busy days, Caulipower's got your back. Caulipower makes the food you crave, but made better for you. The best part? You don't have to sacrifice taste or time, so you can honor your cravings without compromising. Think thin, crispy cauliflower crust pizzas, all-natural chicken tenders coated in cauliflower, and crowd-pleasing nostalgic pizza snacks. Clean ingredients? Always. Ready in minutes? Absolutely. Full of flavor? 100%. Answering the "what's for dinner" question has never been easier. Caulipower's products are available in freezer aisles nationwide. Visit eatcaulipower.com/where-to-buy to find a store near you.
Looking for a way to make storytime more magical for both you and your little ones? Meet the Story Dream Machine, where colorful lights and sound effects help each story unfold right before your eyes. From classic tales to new adventures, there's a wide variety of story packs to collect, sold separately. And here's the best part. Storytime doesn't have to stay in the living room. With the Storytime travel case, you can bring your Story Dream Machine and stories anywhere. On vacation, to grandma and grandpa's, even outside under the stars. Want to make it even and more interactive? Add a Story Dreamers plush to the mix and watch your child engage with their favorite stories in a whole new way. The Story Dream Machine makes story time more magical for you and your little ones. Its colorful lights and sound effects help all our stories, from classic tales to new adventures, unfold right before your eyes. Use the Storytime travel case to take it with you, or add a Story Dreamers plush too. So go ahead, spark imagination, create memories, and bring Storytime to life with the Story Dream Machine.
This is Matt Rogers from Las Culturistas with Matt Rogers and Bowen Yang.
This is Bowen Yang from Las Culturistas with Matt Rogers and Bowen Yang.
Hey, Bowen, it's gift season.
Ugh, stressing me out. Why are the people I love so hard to shop for?
Probably because they only make boring gift guides that are totally uninspired. Except for the guide we made.
In partnership with Marshalls, where premium gifts meet incredible value.
It's giving gifts! With categories like best gifts for the mom whose idea of a sensible walking shoe is a stiletto.
Or best gifts for me that were so thoughtful I really shouldn't have.
Check out the guide on Marshalls.com.
And gift the good stuff at Marshalls.
Hi, Brad. Thanks for coming on Missing Persons to discuss your brother Robert's case with us.
Thank you, Mike. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, we're happy to help you get the word out about your brother and let people know that he's still missing. Haven't been in your situation, but I can imagine this is a real tough spot for you to not know where someone you care about is and not have any answers.
Yeah, Mike, I have felt every single emotion possible over the last almost 5 years now. And I'm not letting it define me, though it has defined me in the past, really the last 3 years have been, quite a bit of a challenge just because there's no closure whatsoever. And I desperately would love to get some type of closure, whether he's alive or if he obviously is deceased. It would be just nice to have that closure.
Yeah, all the families I talk to, they always say the not knowing is sort of the toughest part.
No doubt about it. And I'm the only other sibling. It's just my brother and I, and both my parents have passed. My dad just passed this past spring. So it's been a difficult process because nobody seems to have come to the plate to lend a helping hand. Right or wrong, I was kind of thrust into this position of taking over his search and rescue, and obviously I was his power of attorney. Before this all happened, so it's been a lot, and a lot to handle, but it's life, and I've learned through some very difficult days and evenings to just let life happen, and sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, and but no, I again just thank you for allowing me to talk and share my story.
Yeah, that's no problem. So are you his older brother or younger?
I'm his younger brother by 6 years.
Okay. And were the two of you pretty close growing up and as adults?
Yeah, like best friends. I mean, he and I were very similar in our approach to our corporate life, and we were extremely close, Mike, and to the point where we spoke pretty much every single day, at least for 5 minutes, if not longer, sometimes. So that's what I really miss, is that opportunity to have gotten his opinion on things and just run things by him. But yes, we are extremely close.
If you can, just tell us a little bit about his background, what he's like, where he's, what he did as an adult, that kind of stuff.
Sure. Well, he is 6 years older than me, so he would be 63 right now. And he was married, had two incredibly awesome children. They're now 30 and 28. And he was an all-state football player growing up in Toledo, Ohio. A very good student. Went to Miami University in Oxford, Ohio. and just one of those guys that was the most likely to succeed in high school type of individuals. He went on to start his career in corporate real estate and then ultimately ended into the medical device, specifically orthopedic implants, hips, knees, and shoulders. Started out as a sales rep um, here in Colorado, and then moved his way all the way up to area vice president with a company called Stryker Orthopedics. Had just an incredible career, family, um, but he the stress, I know this for sure, that the stress of his positions, specifically the one that he was in, the area vice president role, the stress level for that role was immense to the point where he really got himself involved in some coping mechanisms from his perspective, that being Valium and Vicodin and alcohol. And that was really what led to his demise that we're talking about right now. So, yeah, just like an incredible individual that just life got too much of him, and he just had a real difficult time in trying to deal with the day to day constraints of being a corporate VP. So, yeah, that's a quick overview of his background.
So you mentioned some of those things that he wrestled with, the Vicodin, alcohol, that kind of stuff. How long did he battle that stuff? Was it in his later years that he was doing that?
Yes, yes, and I remember distinctly the time period. It was when he was promoted, like I said, from a branch manager into the area vice president role, covering. I think he had about 10 states that he was covering, and I just remember when he got that role, the stress within about 2 weeks. He pretty much went up to the mountains, escaped, went up to Breckenridge. He and his now ex-wife turned off all communication with everyone. And that's when he started to take the Vicodin and drinking a little bit more than normal. So I definitely can pinpoint it to that time period.
Hmm. And how did this, this stuff that he was doing affect his relationship with you and the rest of his family?
Yeah, great question. And the substance abuse was not an issue initially, but just because um, he continued down that dark path, it became a major issue to the point where, he ended up getting a divorce um, and pretty much losing everything to the point where he was broke. Um, and it was firsthand watching him go through this and seeing how drugs and alcohol, specifically substance abuses, had such a huge impact on his life. Um, and it was his latter part of his career. It wasn't something that was initially, in high school or college or even in his, 30s or 40s. It was more in his um, a late 50 time frame. So it was very difficult to watch. And my support group, which was, I was hoping would have been my parents, they turned their eye on him. They completely just did not want to have anything to do with him. And that's a whole different topic. But that also then led to his downfall as well, just because he didn't have the outlet to be able to talk to people besides myself. That was it.
Mm. Was he able to receive any kind of counseling or try rehab or anything like that?
He did do a couple 30-day stints in rehab. He was very involved in AA in Michigan when he was living in Michigan at the time. Um, but the the and I know what really caused it. I mean, it was his relationship with my dad. My dad was a corporate, very successful in his corporate world, was very demanding, and he could never satisfy my dad's um, perspective and image of him, though he tried immensely to try to gain that acceptability from my dad and my mom as well, but it was more my dad. So, to the day that he went missing, he still could never get that accolade from my dad.
Mm, a lot of pressure.
Immense amount of pressure, and it was the environment that we grew up in. It was, be an all-state athlete, be National Honor Society, and then move into your career. You're going to be a corporate executive, regardless of what you want in life. It
Yeah.
was this way or else. And that was, Mike, I'm not sure how old you are, but I mean, that was the way things were back in the 70s and 80s growing up in that environment.
Mhm. So when his dependency issues, obviously he's battling them. When do they become like serious medical issues? When did his health decline?
It was right during COVID. I became his power of attorney because he just could not take care of himself. And his excessive alcohol use became a monumental issue to the point where this was summer, actually, it was spring of 2020. I would receive a call. This happened 7 straight times, 7 months in a row from his apartment complex. Let me back up. He was living in Michigan pre-COVID. I helped him find a job back here in Colorado teaching orthopedics, and he was doing great. He was sober, but he would teach for 4 weeks straight, and then he'd have a week off. And those week offs were his demise, where he didn't have anything to do, and the drinking became more of an issue to the point, like I said, where I put him 7 times into ICU, taking him to 2 local hospitals, Skyridge and Littleton Hospital, checking him into the ER, and ultimately, the very last time that his apartment complex called me, I went to his apartment complex. It took him an hour and a half to answer the door, and when he did, he was naked, and he looked like he had been in a fight with Mike Tyson. He had 11 hematomas throughout his head. And by that time, because of his stents in ICU, he contracted a disease called Wernicke-Korsakoff disease, WKS. And that is in the AA rooms, it's considered what they call a wet brain. And the disease is terminal. It has a life expectancy of less than 5 years. And what it's caused by is excessive alcohol use. And what happens is in my brother's case, his neurons would start to shut down because there was a lack of oxygen that was received by the neurons because of his excessive alcohol use. And those neurons ultimately would start to shut down, and an individual with this disease, Wernicke-Korsakoff, WKS, ultimately they do not eat, and that's what ends up they're destroying them. Now, he was in the very early stages of this. He did not know he had this disease before he escaped. So even if he was still here with us, Mike, at this point, because of the life expectancy, which is less than 5 years, he may already have succumbed to the disease regardless.
It's terrible. And I want to go to the transition when he goes into the facility. How did he take that, and what was the decision process of him going into this facility?
Great question. I found out from a case manager summer of 2020. She called me and asked me if I had ever heard of Wernicke-Korsakoff, WKS. I said, obviously no. And she said, well, take a night, do some research. She goes, I think that's what he has, and that's what the doctors think. Well, I did my research. Holy cow, it was spot on the issues he was having with. So at that point, we had to determine, because he was still in ICU at Littleton Hospital, had been there for about 2.5 months. They needed to discharge him. And the only conclusion that I could come up with, and obviously it was my decision being his power of attorney, was a lockdown Medicaid facility. And the lockdown was critical because he tried to escape 2 separate times while he was in ICU between the 2 hospitals I mentioned earlier. And that was critical because he was a risk to leave. He was a flight risk. So we found him a lockdown Medicaid facility in Arvada. He was there for 6 months during COVID. And then February 1st of 2021, the director of the facility that he was at, again, the guy that ran the program, called me. And it was a Tuesday afternoon, and he said, I've got a great idea. Let's move your brother down to Castle Rock. There's a skilled nursing facility there. I think it would be a great idea, he being the director. His brother, believe it or not, worked at this skilled nursing facility, and he thought it was a great place for him. My parents were in Colorado Springs. I'm in Parker. Logistically, it made a lot of sense. And at that time, I told the director, I said, I like the idea, but it's got to be a lockdown facility. It is, Brad. Don't worry about it. I'll take care of it. Well, I said, okay, let's do it. So then Tuesday, like I said, that Tuesday, late afternoon, the director drove him down to Castle Rock, told the facility upon his admission that he was not at risk to leave. And the staff came to the same conclusion, and they never put a wristband on him, which would have prevented him from leaving the facility.
And then just like that, he's gone.
2 days later, Thursday at 8 p.m., he walked out of the facility and has not been seen since.
New school year, new routines, and a calendar that's somehow filled up overnight. When life gets hectic, the last thing you want to do is cook from scratch with all of that cleanup. For those busy days, Cauli Power's got your back. Cauli Power makes the food you crave, but made better for you. The best part? You don't have to sacrifice taste or time, so you can honor your cravings without compromising. Think thin, crispy cauliflower crust pizzas, all-natural chicken tenders coated in cauliflower, and crowd-pleasing, nostalgic pizza snacks. Clean ingredients? Always. Ready in minutes? Absolutely. Full of flavor? 100%. Answering the "what's for dinner" question has never been easier. Cauli Power's products are available in freezer aisles nationwide. Visit eatcaulipower.com/where-to-buy to find a store near you.
Looking for a way to make storytime more magical for both you and your little ones? Meet the Story Dream Machine, where colorful lights and sound effects help each story unfold right before your eyes. From classic tales to new adventures, there's a wide variety of story packs to collect, sold separately. And here's the best part: storytime doesn't have to stay in the living room. With the Storytime travel case, you can bring your Story Dream Machine and stories anywhere, on vacation, to grandma and grandpa's, even outside under the stars. Want to make it even even more interactive? Add a Story Dreamers plush to the mix and watch your child engage with their favorite stories in a whole new way. The Story Dream Machine makes story time more magical for you and your little ones. Its colorful lights and sound effects help all our stories, from classic tales to new adventures, unfold right before your eyes. Use the Storytime travel case to take it with you, or add a Story Dreamers plush too. So go ahead, spark imagination, create memories, and bring Storytime to life with the Story Dream Machine.
This is Matt Rogers from Las Culturistas with Matt Rogers and Bowen Yang.
This is Bowen Yang from Las Culturistas with Matt Rogers and Bowen Yang.
Hey, Bowen, it's gift season.
Ugh, stressing me out. Why are the people I love so hard to shop for?
Probably because they only make boring gift guides that are totally uninspired. Except for the guide we made.
In partnership with Marshalls, where premium gifts meet incredible value.
It's giving gifts! With categories like best gifts for the mom whose idea of a sensible walking shoe is a stiletto.
Or best gifts for me that were so thoughtful I really shouldn't have.
Check out the guide on Marshalls.com.
And gift the good stuff at Marshalls.
So when you get the news that he's missing, obviously you were shocked because you thought this was going to be a lockdown facility. This wasn't going to happen. But when you find that news out, were you hopeful they would find him quickly? And what were you thinking at that time?
Yes, Mike, I thought for sure that we'd find him. I mean, there was I never thought my brother would go missing. I just never thought that would be the case. He, had everything in the world. But, he was struggling, obviously, as I mentioned. But I had I had hope. I did. To the point where, Douglas County Search and Rescue that evening and for the next 48 hours, had a search and rescue team of approximately 50 people, infrared drones, and it was around the clock search and rescue for a good 48 hours in that area. And I was involved in it as well. And we all thought we would find him. And we never did.
Just no sign of him.
I mean, the hardest thing that I had to ever face, obviously, with this situation, but then after that 48 hours, after the search and rescue team, Douglas County, I mean, keep in mind, Douglas County Search and Rescue, they're well known for, finding people. They do a lot of mountain searches. So I had a lot of faith that they would be able to do it. And I just remember the director of the search and rescue team coming to me and saying, Brad, unfortunately, we don't have the resources to continue this. It's going to be turned over now to the CBI, Colorado Bureau of Investigation. Detectives will be assigned to the case, and they will take it over from here. And I just remember driving home from Castle Rock that day, just in tears, and just I didn't know what to do. No clue what to do.
Overwhelming.
Yeah, and this has impacted me in my own journey as well. Obviously, I mean, I have struggled now because of this, because there's been no closure. I've struggled with trying to stay the course, and I've struggled with alcohol, and this has been a critical factor for me with my sobriety and keeping myself healthy. So, it's been an overwhelming, and that's why I really wanted to take the time when you asked me and the detectives to see if I'd be interested in telling the story. I obviously was very, very welcoming it, because I can only imagine how this can impact others that have had this type of situation go through their lives. Because I used alcohol to numb, and it was because I had no closure. I wanted that opportunity to talk to my brother again, to talk to my parents, so we could get some closure. And we still don't have it.
And you talked before we started recording about how you hope that, maybe this will help somebody else, going through the same thing. And, it's, pretty admirable of you to do that.
Well, yeah, thank you, Mike. It's like I said, I have struggled immensely with this, and I don't. I would hope I could share my story so that if somebody is struggling with this, they don't go down the path that I did, which was a very dark path as well.
Yeah. And so after all this time looking back, on your experience, the lack of results that you've seen in finding him, not having that closure that you mentioned, what have you learned? What kind of things would you want to pass on to maybe somebody out there listening that's got something similar going on?
Keep the faith. I mean, that's the only thing that's gotten me through it is that, I know, Mike, my heart of hearts that we're not going to find him. And even if we do, because he has that contracted the Wernicke-Korsakoff disease, that even if we do find him, I don't think there's much life left. Um, but the only thing I would have to tell others is, if you're going through this, get a good support network that you can rely on, that you can turn to during these dark times. Because for me, the worst times are at night where, had a busy day and, the day's now ended and I'm just there collecting my thoughts. And, these things start to come from different angles and it gets somewhat emotional sometimes just because, I'd love the opportunity to just say, hey, where are you, Rob? I miss you, buddy.
Mhm.
Um, I just want you to be in a better place, and I hope that you found a better place.
Mm. And I'm just to get a sense too, because it's, I've heard everything you've explained, but I'm trying to get a better understanding of your brother. How alert or what kind of communication level was there? Was he coherent? And because I'm picturing, a medical diagnosis that maybe is similar to dementia where he doesn't know stuff, but is that accurate or
Yeah,
was he pretty okay.
very much so. And that's why this case has gotten the attention that it has. And I mean, you Google my name, you Google my brother's name, the first thing that pops up are the three local interviews that took place on, ABC, Fox, and CBS News. Um, because he was taking medication for this. And that was critical because when he went missing, obviously he had no money, no credit cards, no license. And most importantly, he did not have his medication that he needed.
Hmm. And it's just puzzling that he's able to somehow get to wherever he wound up with no resources, no medication, and just wind up in a spot where he hasn't been found.
Exactly. And that's been the most challenging thing is just thinking and playing it through in my head of, gosh, did he maybe hop in a car with somebody? Was he able to convince somebody that he needed help? There's a local train that runs around 8 o'clock every evening. Could he have hopped on that? Could he have gotten somewhere safe? And then in turn, he's living in a third world country. Um, is he been cremated? Has he, all these things go through your mind.
Mm.
And, you know, throughout this 5-year span, we've had some clues that have come back. As an example, they did a search of everything west of Highway 85. they found a pair of jeans. And they thought because obviously he was wearing jeans that night. We thought that the detectives thought that this may be a big clue. Found out the size of the jeans were much larger than what his actual size waist is. We found dental records. Not we, but the detectives did. Were able to get his past dental records to the CBI team to look into the dental records, or the I guess the teeth that were found. That came back as not a match either. So we've had some clues here and there, but now they're getting. I just don't have much more to go on from thinking that this is going to be closed.
Yeah. Such a difficult situation because just the race against time with the illness he had, as you mentioned, makes it highly likely that he's not with us anymore. And it's almost like it's now a recovery mission to find him, but I'm sure you at least would want to give him a proper goodbye. So I'm sure it's still important for you to find him, even though you said earlier that may not happen.
Correct. And right now where things are at least in my mind, is my dad's recently passed. Um, Wanting to get closure on this is critical. Trying to get a death certificate put in place is where things are at right now. And, there's, I guess, some legal loopholes that need to occur for a a death certificate to be initiated, because it's not as clear as day where they say, well, Colorado has a 5-year or 7-year statutory for a missing person. It doesn't mean that a death certificate after that 5 or 7 year period is actually submitted. So there's some legal issues, and I guess, and that's where I'm at right now in this whole journey, is understanding what do I need to do to be able to get closure, to get a death certificate assigned to this.
So a lot of work and stuff that you've got to go through just to tie things up and, sort of, you know, do end of care stuff, I would imagine, final preparations, that kind of stuff.
Correct. That is correct.
And so how hopeful do you remain though that you will one day, even if they say, "Hey, we found his remains," how hopeful are you that you'll be able to bring him home at least and say a proper farewell?
100%. That is what, that's what is for me, keeping the faith. And that's what I hope to be able to do one day. And that's why the open communication is still there with the CBI team, the investigators, and um, that's why I've not closed the book on this yet.
Mm. Well, at this point, it may be an uphill battle to find out what happened, but I wish you luck in finding out, and obviously it's affected your life too, not just your brother that's missing. And we'll do our part to help spread the word, let people know that he's still missing and you're hoping for answers. And I really appreciate you coming on and sharing what you've been through and sharing your brother's story with us.
Well, thank you, Mike, for taking the time to do this, and thank you for listening. So if I can, like I said, if I can help in anybody, or I guess the only key takeaway for this whole thing is, um, just don't give up, and try not to let this um, define you as a person, because I let that happen, and it really took me down a bad rabbit hole that I don't wish anybody to go down.
very good advice, and thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
New school year, new routines, and a calendar that's somehow filled up overnight. When life gets hectic, the last thing you want to do is cook from scratch with all of that cleanup. For those busy days, Caulipower's got your back. Caulipower makes the food you crave, but made better for you. The best part? You don't have to sacrifice taste or time, so you can honor your cravings without compromising. Think thin, crispy cauliflower crust pizzas, all-natural chicken tenders coated in cauliflower, and crowd-pleasing nostalgic pizza snacks. Clean ingredients? Always. Ready in minutes? Absolutely. Full of flavor? 100%. Answering the "what's for dinner" question has never been easier. Caulipower's products are available in freezer aisles nationwide. Visit eatcaulipower.com/where-to-buy to find a store near you.
Looking for a way to make storytime more magical for both you and your little ones? Meet the Story Dream Machine, where colorful lights and sound effects help each story unfold right before your eyes. From classic tales to new adventures, there's a wide variety of story packs to collect, sold separately. And here's the best part: Storytime doesn't have to stay in the living room. With the Storytime travel case, you can bring your Story Dream Machine and stories anywhere, on vacation, to grandma and grandpa's, even outside under the stars. Want to make it even more interactive? Add a Story Dreamers plush to the mix and watch your child engage with their favorite stories in a whole new way. The Story Dream Machine makes storytime more magical for you and your little ones. Its colorful lights and sound effects help all our stories, from classic tales to new adventures, unfold right before your eyes. Use the Storytime travel case to take it with you, or add a Story Dreamers plush too. So go ahead, spark imagination, create memories, and bring storytime to life with the Story Dream Machine.
This is Matt Rogers from Las Culturistas with Matt Rogers and Bowen Yang.
This is Bowen Yang from Las Culturistas with Matt Rogers and Bowen Yang.
Hey, Bowen, it's gift season.
Ugh, stressing me out. Why are the people I love so hard to shop for?
Probably because they only make boring gift guides that are totally uninspired. Except for the guide we made.
In partnership with Marshalls, where premium gifts meet incredible value.
It's giving gifts! With categories like best gifts for the mom whose idea of a sensible walking shoe is a stiletto.
Or best gifts for me that were so thoughtful I really shouldn't have.
Check out the guide on Marshalls.com.
And gift the good stuff at Marshalls.
With us today is Kristen Tinsley. She is working the case of Robert Gautsche. Thank you so much for coming on, Kristen, to walk us through this case.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate being here.
Well, this is a case that, we're hoping we can help spread the word about, let people know that it's still unsolved. He's still a missing person. We worked with your agency before, so we're happy to help again if we can. I guess before we dive into the case and get started with what happened, what we know, what we don't know, can you just introduce yourself for listeners and just give a little bit of your background and your experience and what you bring to the table and how you came to have this case?
Sure. I've worked for the Douglas County Sheriff's Office for just over 12 years. And when this case occurred, it was February 2021, and I was in the investigations division at the time in the persons crime unit. And that persons crime unit handles missing persons cases. And so I was assigned this missing persons case at that time.
How often do you get missing persons cases in your jurisdiction?
It's kind of a loaded question. It just depends. Maybe, one a month, a handful a month. It just really kind of depends on circumstance. It's not super, super frequent for this jurisdiction.
Are they usually resolved pretty quickly?
Yes. In my experience, most of them were resolved even within, a couple of days, sometimes a few weeks. So this case was different, where it obviously still is not resolved at this time. This is pretty rare circumstance for my experience with the Douglas County Sheriff's Office.
Okay. Now, can you give just a brief summary or maybe some bullet points of Robert's case, what we know, what we don't know, what you've been able to find, what you haven't found, and just sort of run through, and then I'll ask you some follow-up questions after that?
Sure. So it was reported to us on the night of February 4th, 2021, which was a Thursday evening. Robert had been a resident at a skilled nursing facility in the Castle Rock area, which is closely located to an interstate. And one of the nursing staff members had called the sheriff's office to report that he had walked away from the facility. He had only been at that facility for 2 days at that point, and he had been recently transferred from what was considered to be a lockdown skilled nursing facility. And when he was transferred to the nursing facility here in Castle Rock, he was not required to be locked down. He essentially was categorized as high functioning, and they thought he was doing well enough that he was not required to be locked down at the time. So the night he was reported missing, staff said he had gone outside to smoke a cigarette. They had later reviewed security camera footage and saw that that occurred shortly before 7 p.m. He interacted with a staff member around 7 to 7:15 p.m. And then ultimately walked away. Staff realized he was missing after a while, and one of the staff members actually left the area and drove their own personal vehicle in the area looking for Robert. And they believe they saw him standing on the shoulder of the interstate nearby, which would have been just to the west of the facility. And when they got closer, they no longer saw who they believed to be him, and it looked like he had disappeared down a hill. The responding deputies initially instigated our search and rescue volunteers, and they did an extensive search of the area, which unfortunately resulted in no results. He was not located at that time. Later investigation revealed security camera footage from a local grocery store in which Robert had applied for a shopper's loyalty card at the store and then tried to use that loyalty card to purchase a carton of cigarettes. He was informed by staff members there that it wasn't a form of payment and he could not purchase the cigarettes. And so he wandered throughout the store, came back about 5 minutes later, and then tried to purchase a spaghetti deli meal from the cashier with a loyalty card, and the cashier then informed him again that it wasn't a form of payment. He, couldn't purchase the food with a loyalty card. And Robert then left the store. He was last seen on security cameras walking eastbound through the grocery store parking lot shortly after 8 o'clock that same night. And that was the last that he had been seen.
And the area where he was seen, you mentioned there was a hill there. Was that after he left the store, or was that before he was witnessed at the store?
Those details are a little fuzzy. The time frame that was given to us by the staff member, they reported that they saw supposedly him at the same time he was actually seen on surveillance footage in the store. So that part's a little confusing.
Is it possible there's like a mistaken time, or that it could be him, but it was just their timing's off or something like that?
Sure, absolutely. And we see that pretty commonly throughout most investigations where people kind of in those maybe traumatic moments where their stress is heightened, get confused on time frames. So it's certainly a possibility.
And what is the terrain, the layout in that area like? Is it easily something you can walk, or is it something that would be a little bit of a challenge? And what was the weather like too that day?
The terrain in general, it'd be a bit of a challenge, kind of depending where you're at. Where the skilled nursing facility is kind of surrounded by, at least at the time, was surrounded by fields with some overgrown, bushes and things like that. It'd be hard to walk through. And it's set really close to an interstate, which is a very, very busy interstate, heavily trafficked. Less traffic, later at night is would be commonplace, but still quite dangerous area. And the interstate, you'd have to go from the facility, down a significant hill to get to it. And then to where Robert was seen on the surveillance footage at that local grocery store, that was again down a hill, past some significant terrain that'd be kind of fielded in nature. And then there's a lot of business establishments and parking lots and vehicle traffic that he would have had to walk through to get to that grocery store as well. The weather that night, it was early February, and it was dark. It was in the evening time around 8 p.m. I don't remember the exact temperature, but it was below freezing.
Oh, once it was realized that he was missing, how fast, or were there any kind of search efforts, put in? Is there any kind of, Does that place have some kind of measures that if somebody goes missing, they do X, Y, and Z as far as a follow-up or some kind of procedure?
For the facility itself, I'm not sure their policies and procedures as far as that goes specifically, but they contacted the sheriff's office, I think within the hour that they realized that he had been missing. And then our deputies responded very quickly, which is standard. And after the main case deputy had an idea of what was going on, he decided to go ahead and initiate our search and rescue response. And that happened relatively quickly as well. This is all within hours of the same evening. And then search and rescue searched for multiple hours into the overnight hours that evening.
So there's no sign of him after he leaves the store that anyone can confirm. I'm curious too, and I should have asked you this earlier. With his condition, were there times where he was coherent and knew where he was, what he was doing? It sounds like you explained that he couldn't use that card to pay for something, but he didn't quite understand that. Would he have had the wherewithal, do you think, to know who he was and where he was trying to go?
That part's hard to say. So information I learned from Robert's brother, Brad, was that Robert had been suffering with bouts of alcoholism for years. And stemming from that, he had been diagnosed with a syndrome called Wernicke-Korsakoff Syndrome, which is essentially a neurological order which is caused by chronic alcoholism or alcohol abuse. And some of the symptoms of that syndrome include confusion, memory loss, things like that. So according to Robert's brother Brad, Robert spoke well and he wouldn't seem like he was impaired probably to a random person that may come across him. With that being said, staff at that local grocery store said that Robert seemed, quote, off, end quote, and it was strange to them that he was in the store, first of all, because he wasn't wearing a mask, and that was during the COVID era where masks were generally required. And just his behavior was off in the sense, of trying to purchase the cigarettes and then the food item using that loyalty card and just not seeming to understand that he couldn't do so. So sure, it absolutely seemed like he was suffering some sort of confusion at the time. However, staff at the skilled nursing facility didn't really speak to that same confusion. They said it seemed that he was much more coherent than the grocery store staff made it seem to be.
So, once it's realized that he is missing, and I think we're going to talk a little bit more about some of the details about some of the tools that were used to try and find him. Were there any searches done immediately, like organized searches, people, dogs, anything like that in the area for him?
Yes, our search and rescue team, that was the most immediate right away. Search was that evening, and they generally have dogs with them. I apologize, I'm not sure if dogs were utilized then at that moment. That happened right away and with negative results. And then a secondary search of that area utilizing our search and rescue team happened a few years later. It wasn't until May of 2023 that was coordinated, and that happened again. We had developed no new leads for 2 years and decided to search that area again in case somehow something may have been missed at the time, whether that be due to the weather at the time, or maybe there was an area that hadn't been thoroughly searched at the time that we focused on later. That search in May of 2023 resulted with no results as well. And then in September of this year of 2025, we conducted a additional search. This time it wasn't a search and rescue on foot search. This time it was a drone search that was conducted by one of our search and rescue volunteer staff members.
And with these efforts that you did, early and then later on, were there any kind of clues found, any piece of his clothing, any of his belongings, anything like that?
Nothing found initially, and it wasn't until the search that was conducted in May of 2023. There was a pair of black jeans that were located, and that did match the clothing description that Robert was last seen wearing. So he was last seen wearing a brown leather jacket and then black jeans. However, the genes that were located in May of 2023 and then collected were later determined to have been too big of a size to have belonged to Robert.
Okay, so it was a false lead, it sounds like.
Yeah, exactly. Also, during that search in May of 2023, search and rescue dogs were utilized at that time. It doesn't appear that they were used during that initial search in 2021.
New school year, new routines, and a calendar that's somehow filled up overnight. When life gets hectic, the last thing you want to do is cook from scratch with all of that cleanup. For those busy days, Collie Power's got your back. Collie Power makes the food you crave, but made better for you. The best part? You don't have to sacrifice taste or time, so you can honor your cravings without compromising. Think thin, crispy cauliflower crust pizzas, all-natural chicken tenders coated in cauliflower, and crowd-pleasing, nostalgic pizza snacks. Clean ingredients? Always. Ready in minutes? Absolutely. Full of flavor? 100%. Answering the "what's for dinner" question has never been easier. Collie Power's products are available in freezer aisles nationwide. Visit eatcollypower.com/where-to-buy to find a store near you.
Looking for a way to make storytime more magical for both you and your little ones? Meet the Story Dream Machine, where colorful lights and sound effects help each story unfold right before your eyes. From classic tales to new adventures, there's a wide variety of story packs to collect, sold separately. And here's the best part: Storytime doesn't have to stay in the living room. With the Storytime travel case, you can bring your Story Dream Machine and stories anywhere, on vacation, to grandma and grandpa's, even outside under the stars. Want to make it even more interactive? Add a Story Dreamers plush to the mix and watch your child engage with their favorite stories in a whole new way. The Story Dream Machine makes storytime more magical for you and your little ones. Its colorful lights and sound effects help all our stories, from classic tales to new adventures, unfold right before your eyes. Use the Storytime travel case to take it with you, or add a Story Dreamers plush too. So go ahead, spark imagination, create memories, and bring storytime to life with the Story Dream Machine.
This is Matt Rogers from Las Culturistas with Matt Rogers and Bowen Yang.
This is Bowen Yang from Las Culturistas with Matt Rogers and Bowen Yang.
Hey, Bowen, it's gift season.
Ugh, stressing me out. Why are the people I love so hard to shop for?
Probably because they only make boring gift guides that are totally uninspired. Except for the guide we made.
In partnership with Marshalls, where premium gifts meet incredible value.
It's giving gifts! With categories like best gifts for the mom whose idea of a sensible walking shoe is a stiletto.
Or best gifts for me that were so thoughtful I really shouldn't have.
Check out the guide on Marshalls.com.
And gift the good stuff at Marshalls.
Now, you had also mentioned that on that last day, he was... he went out to smoke a cigarette. He tried to buy cigarettes, so obviously he was a smoker. And I also read that it was reported that he called his brother Brad to ask him if he had money, if I'm not mistaken. Can you confirm, was that the day he disappeared that he called him, or would that have been the day before?
It was the day before he disappeared that he called his brother Brad. It was sometime early in the morning, or I think around 10 a.m. or so. He had called using a facility telephone. He had called Brad to ask him for specifically $50 so he could go purchase cigarettes.
And you had touched on that shopping card, him trying to use that. Did he have access to his own money or credit cards of any sort? Could he have purchased anything at any point on his own?
No, and that's one of the things that made this case very difficult. From our understanding throughout the investigation, Robert did not have any access to finance other than potentially some cash. He had no credit cards. Sometimes in missing persons cases, depending on the circumstance, if family has access and knowledge to their loved ones' bank accounts, they can potentially assist law enforcement in tracking some of those recent transactions to potentially identify a recent location for their loved one. In this case, that wasn't an option, since Robert didn't have access to any sort of credit cards or money other than potentially cash.
So it sounds like he really had the clothes on his back and nothing else.
Correct. I later learned, due to an inventory that was taken by the skilled nursing facility staff, that he had a watch that was registered in his inventory that was worth around an estimated $2,100. And it's speculation, but Brad and myself also wonder if Robert potentially could have tried to use that watch at some point in time if he did intentionally leave, to facilitate, sell it for cash, or coordinate some sort of, payment using that watch.
Because that's the only real thing he would have had of value.
Yes.
And then not having, access to money or anything like that, he also didn't have access to medication that he would have been taking. Not taking the medications or disappearing and not having them, what that would have done to his state of mind and what effects that might have caused?
That's another difficulty for this case. I received kind of two different stories from that. According to Brad, it would have been pretty detrimental for Robert not to have been on his medication. And I think just his confusion and his memory loss potentially could have been exacerbated if he didn't have access to his medications. Nursing facility staff kind of countered that, and they said that they didn't think that he would really have any issues not being on the medication. I know he was on some sort of antipsychotic medication, and just the side effects for not taking it didn't appear to be as severe according to medical staff information.
And I want to go to something you had talked about too. You had mentioned that a couple times he had tried to flee or escape, whatever word you want to use, to get out of these places, but he had been caught and brought back. Do you know where he was trying to go? Did he ever say anything about where he wanted to go and why he was trying to get out of there?
I unfortunately don't have any information on that.
Yeah, it perhaps if you knew that, if somebody knew that, that might be, something that might give you a new direction to look in.
Oh, absolutely.
It's unfortunate that's not known. So yeah, if we can, I want to zero in on some of the drone stuff because that's sort of high tech, and some of the other things that people are using now in missing persons cases are, it's not just people walking arm in arm next to each other. They're using a lot of high tech stuff.
Sure.
How did that help you? And is there anything that it couldn't do, in the searching for Robert?
So something that's really neat with the drones and the ability to use a drone to search is that the drone can access very quickly an extensive area of terrain that would be very difficult to access on foot, just due to the type of terrain, and two, just the amount of manpower required to, say, for example, do a grid search for a mile could take a very long period of time versus a drone could do that in a significantly short period of time. So I don't remember the other part of your question.
Just the technology aspect of it. Is there anything that it couldn't do versus how it did help?
With the technology for the drone, something that was neat that it could do is it could kind of focus in on some items of interest that it would see from a distance. So for example, if there was a piece of clothing, or if there was a piece of trash like a tarp, or like a vehicle part that was metal or something of that nature, it could take pictures of these items of interest from a distance. And then myself as a detective and partners as one of whom was a crime analyst supervisor, Michelle Kennedy, we would look at these images and make a determination on if it was something that we felt needed to be looked at more closely. And then we could ask the drone pilot to then hone in on those images, get a little bit of a closer view to try to make a determination on, is this potentially a body, or is this actually clothing, or is this bones? For example, the drone did locate some bones, something that it could not do. It could not make the determination on if they were animal or human remains. So that was one of the things that we, even with the drone, we still had to go then search on foot and verify that ourselves.
So since all this has been done, have there been any possible sightings of him recently?
No, nothing recently. Initially, so I was assigned this case on February 8th of 2021. And within that first week, we did a lot of what we call social media blasts, where our public information officers post and highlight information across various social media platforms, and the local news media also picked up the story as well. Initially, that social media and local news media information gleaned a handful of potential leads and potential sightings where people reported maybe having seen someone that looked like Robert near the highway, near businesses along the highway. One person even called and reported that they saw somebody they believed was him eating a sub sandwich outside of a sandwich shop in our local outlet mall near the area. That person ended up turning out not to be Robert, of course. But since that first week, I've received almost no leads. There have been no reports of even any potential sightings of Robert.
It's, a lot of people might say, okay, this sounds like a case where he walked off, only had the clothes on his back, didn't have any other resources, and maybe he succumbed to the elements, died of hypothermia, something like that out in the cold. But, if that's the case, it seems likely that his remains would have been found, or some clothing or something might have been found by now, and that's not the case. Do you have a theory that maybe he's not in that area, that he made it out of that area somehow?
I do. And this is just my personal theory based off of information provided by Brad and just kind of the circumstances in general. Without the ability for Robert to have, finances to facilitate some sort of transportation, it's possible he could have asked somebody for a ride to have gone somewhere else. I think the fact that we did such extensive searching in that area, especially immediately, it's very unlikely that if he were to have passed, that his remains would still be in the area and that we would not know about it. I think that'd be incredibly unlikely. So I think it's more likely that he potentially would have received transportation from somebody out of the area.
And if that's the case, then that sort of makes a whole giant, endless area that you'd have to search, because he could be anywhere after that.
Absolutely. And one of the other difficulties with this case, along with, not being able to potentially track Robert's finances, is that Robert didn't have a cell phone. And in some missing persons cases, depending on the circumstance, law enforcement, with the family's assistance, can sometimes track cell phones and potentially track the cell phone's last location. That was not a possibility in this case because he didn't have one. So it just makes the chance for him to be, literally anywhere, that much more significant, which makes this case that much more difficult.
Yeah, with the highway right there, it's not, unimaginable that he could have got a ride with a trucker or somebody else, and could be anywhere. I'm just wondering, were there any attempts made at maybe passing out flyers at truck stops to truckers, maybe checking different shelters in the area or maybe throughout the state?
Yes, so Brad himself initially actually had created his own flyers that he was passing out to various areas, local businesses, shelters, kind of anywhere he could think of along the way. And then also I created what we call a BOLO, essentially a law enforcement bulletin for Robert, identifying him as a missing person. And between law enforcement and Brad and staff actually from the previous facility he had been at, multiple homeless shelters in the Denver area were contacted. Lots of resources were used to kind of post that information anywhere possible, unfortunately with no results. Reached out to family, to an ex-fiance out of state, that he had contacted 2 days before he went missing. But she just basically said she hadn't heard from him.
It sounds interesting, the fact that he would reach out to. Had she heard from him recently before that, or was this like the first time in a long time?
So Robert had been talking with his ex-fiance, it sounds like almost daily for a few months. Mainly when he had been at the other skilled nursing facility before he had been transferred to the facility in Castle Rock. And he last spoke with her over the phone 2 days before he went missing. When search and rescue contacted her that evening, he went missing. And then when I later contacted her, she reported that she just thought it was very odd because he was reaching out to her so frequently, and then all of a sudden that stopped. And so myself and Brad thought it would be likely that Robert may have tried to travel out of state where she was located to see her, but all information that we have was that did not happen, that she still had not heard from him.
So, now a lot of time has passed. You mentioned this has now been years and no additional signs of him. What do you think at this point is going to be the thing that can solve this case, or maybe, provide some answers? What do you think it's going to take for that to happen?
I think if Robert left intentionally and had the intent to, not contact his family, it's going to be very difficult for law enforcement to ever learn that information, because as an adult, who his own brother said is a very intelligent adult, people can easily kind of hide themselves away and not contact family. So I think absent, Robert reaching out himself, or if he is with somebody who is aware that he is missing, absent them stepping forward to law enforcement and just letting us know, hey, he's okay, he's with us, it is going to be very difficult for us to ever locate him.
So are there things at this point that you'd still like to do that haven't been done? Any kind of new searches or new investigative methods that you want to try and put, to use at some point?
I think now the best thing that we can keep doing, just due to unfortunately the lack of leads, is we'll keep searching our databases where we can check different reports that are created from things like credit checks and things like that, just to see what we call kind of proof of life. So if he applies for a credit card, or if he applies for a job, or if he applies to buy a car or something like that, we potentially would be able to know that information if we just continue to routinely check our databases that allow us to see some of that information.
And speaking of databases, does he have a DNA file in NamUs or anything like that?
Yes. So he does have a profile in NamUs, and that case number, it's MP81507. And his DNA has been uploaded via his brother Brad, and then also his father.
It's good if there are any remains found or anything like that, they might be able to link that back to that and have, it might not be the outcome that people want, but at least, you might know where he's at if we're able to make a link with that DNA.
And also, since you brought up remains, it actually was just about a year ago, was December of 2024. There were unidentified human remains that were located in Jefferson County, which is one of our neighboring counties to Douglas County. And those remains were compared via some dental records that we had uploaded to NamUs of Robert's. And because of the dental records, the comparison confirmed that those unidentified remains were not Robert.
So another false lead, it sounds like.
Correct.
Is there any kind of reward being offered in the case?
No, there's not at this time.
Okay. If there's anyone out there listening that knows anything or has any information, anything like that, who can they call? Where should they call? And what information are you looking for?
If anyone is listening and knows any information that would be helpful, they could just call me directly. So my name is Kristen Tinsley, and my desk phone number, it's 303-784-7810. They're also welcome to send me an email if they would like, or if they prefer. In my email address, it's my first initial and last name. So that's K, T as in Tom, I, N as in Nora, SLEY @dcsheriff.net.
Hopefully, if anyone has any information, they will, do the right thing and reach out to you and provide some answers for his family. I want to thank you for coming on and walking us through the case. It's a unfortunate one, and It's on this show, we've actually had a few similar cases where people that were under care disappeared, and it's frightening that it can happen, that they can slip away and not easily be found. But we know it does happen. But I hope you have a good outcome and you're able to find out what happened here.
Well, thank you so much for having me and just for helping to spread the word about Robert. I just hope his family can, gain some closure. I just can only imagine how difficult it's been for them, especially after so many years.
Yeah, I agree with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Missing Persons. If you can provide any information to help solve the case we discussed in this episode, please contact the appropriate authorities.
If you enjoy this podcast, please take a moment to tell your friends about Missing Persons and invite them to listen to the show. Word of mouth will help us grow and bring these cases to a larger audience. You can also help us by taking a moment to rate and review Missing Persons on the platform you're listening to us now on. If you want to get early and ad-free access to new episodes of Missing Persons and help support the show in the process, please consider a subscription to our Apple Podcast. For only $4.99 a month or $49.99 a year, you'll get early ad-free access to not only this show, but to every other show on the AbJack network of podcasts. You can get started with a free trial by searching for AbJack Entertainment in your Apple app, and we'll include a link in the show notes. If you want to find us on social media, we're on every major platform and on YouTube. Just search for Missing Persons Podcast. We'll include links to all of our social media in our show notes, and you can also visit our website, missingpersonspodcast.com. Finally, if you're in need of a platform to discuss a missing persons case that you're connected to, feel free to reach out to us on our website. We're happy to help. Just a reminder that new episodes of Missing Persons air every other Saturday. On behalf of Jess Betancourt, this is Mike Morford saying thanks, and we'll see you next time on Missing Persons.